It's fair to say that there are more great movies releasing every year, nay, every month, than even the most committed film lover can possibly keep track of. Now, marketing is certainly helpful in maintaining a movie's place in the public eye, but of course marketing is also really, really expensive. A consequence of this is that many great films end up arriving totally out of nowhere, whether landing in cinemas after a low-key marketing campaign or being quietly, even unceremoniously dumped on streaming. While all of the following films were raved about by critics, to general viewers it seemed like they suddenly materialised out of nothing. At which point it's tough not to consider that they desperately deserve more respect on their names. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for Whatculture, and these are 10 awesome recent movies that came totally out of nowhere. Number 10, The Last Stop in Yuma County. The Last Stop in Yuma County feels like precisely the sort of movie which blows up out of Sundance and becomes a surprise hit. Yet this stunning crime thriller had a far more low-key rollout. The film premiered to strong reviews at Fantastic Fest 2023, yet this failed to translate into substantial buzz, and it ended up being quietly released in just 45 cinemas by distributor Well Go USA Entertainment last May. It grossed less than $100,000 at the box office, but was soon enough discovered by genre fans on streaming, who were naturally baffled that they'd heard nothing about this brilliantly crafted neo-western. Even with a stunning 97% on the tomato meter, The Last Stop in Yuma County was barely talked about even in cineast circles until it hit streaming, where it's been largely embraced as a darkly comedic, expectation-defying 90-minute chamber piece of a movie. Number 9, Hundreds of Beavers. Hundreds of Beavers is a film whose very existence feels like a defiant flipping of the bird to everything we know about modern filmmaking. A black and white slapstick comedy about an Applejack maker who faces off against a fleet of angry beavers. The movie was produced for a mere $150,000, having been shot in 2020 before spending the next 2 years in post-production as extensive cartoonish visual effects were developed. Hundreds of Beavers finally premiered at Fantastic Fest in September 2022 and began a more than year-long global festival run, where it was largely well received by critics and audiences. However, the wider world didn't really learn about the film's existence until the filmmakers began to distribute it themselves theatrically in early 2024, where it became a buzzy word-of-mouth hit, grossing more than $1 million at the box office. Audiences were alternately charmed and baffled that such a peculiar, if hilarious and brilliantly made, piece of work could force its way into cinemas rather than being quietly dumped on VOD. But considering the mesmerising craft involved, what a breath of fresh air it was to see Hundreds of Beavers prove that indie filmmakers can make a sudden impact without spending millions of dollars on marketing. Number 8, Grand Theft Hamlet. Grand Theft Hamlet came out of nowhere because it's just such a peculiar concept for a movie. This fiercely original documentary follows a pair of actors who, during a period of lockdown amid the pandemic, attempted to stage a performance of Hamlet inside the video game Grand Theft Auto Online. The film was shot entirely inside GTA Online and so could be produced largely in secret before it premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival last year and won the Grand Jury Award for Best Documentary Feature. Even so, it wasn't until the film's general release at the end of 2024 that film fans and gamers alike really started paying attention to it. Between Grand Theft Hamlet's festival success and rave reviews from critics, it's quite the staggering success story for a movie produced entirely inside a video game, and which could have easily just been another viral flavour of the week. Number 7, Magpie. Magpie is a neo-noir thriller starring Daisy Ridley as a woman whose life begins to unravel when her husband falls in love with the lead actress of the new movie their child actress daughter is working on. Despite premiering at last year's South by Southwest, Magpie had no other major festival screenings, instead spending the better part of 8 months sitting in limbo before getting a theatrical release so meagre its grosses weren't widely reported. and then being dumped on VOD. But Magpie was largely well received by critics and those audiences who discovered it on streaming, many ultimately questioning why a well-made genre film starring one of the new faces of Star Wars didn't get more press. One can only hope that a film this devilishly, playfully savage can grow an audience and become a cult hit in the years to come, because it deserved so much better than this absolute nothing burger of a rollout. Number 6. Flow. Flow is one of the most inspiring cinematic success stories of recent years, and storming proof that with enough talent and passion, even a small, little-known project can win an Oscar. Flow is a dialogue-free Latvian animated film following a cat as it tries to survive in a flooded post-apocalyptic world. And though it had a strong festival run, screening at Cannes and the Toronto International Film Festival, among many others, all signs pointed to this thing coming and going where general audiences were concerned. The film was quietly produced over a 5-year period by a small team of around 40 to 50 artists using the free software Blender, only to suddenly surge into contention as a legitimate contender for the Best Animated Feature Oscar at the tail end of 2024. Many analysts still pegged Flow to be beaten out by its decidedly more mainstream rival, The Wild Robot. But alas, Flow indeed won the Oscar, a stunning triumph for a film that few had heard of mere months before. It arrived amid little hype, charmed the hell out of everyone, and made off with Oscar gold. Honestly, you love to see it. Number 5. Small things like these. Hands up if you had any idea that Cillian Murphy starred in one of the best reviewed films of 2024. Murphy's follow-up to his Oscar-winning performance in Oppenheimer was a low-key Irish historical drama in which Murphy plays a man who discovers disturbing secrets at a local convent and faces a dilemma over whether to act. Despite premiering at the Berlin International Film Festival to strong reviews, where some predicted that Murphy might receive a second consecutive Best Actor Oscar nomination, the film's profile soon fell off a cliff. The bleak drama failed to secure major distribution outside of the UK, and with Lionsgate having little prior success with awards campaigning, it ended up quietly hitting streaming at the end of 2024, where it got thoroughly lost in the shuffle amid a slew of more crowd-pleasing seasonal releases. And so to anyone who stumbles across the film's thumbnail while scrolling through a streaming service library, it must seem a tad strange that a raved-about drama from a recent Oscar winner was just tossed out there without even a shred of enthusiasm. Number 4. Oddity. Anyone who saw Damien McCarthy's superb debut horror film Caveat should have probably been anxiously anticipating his follow-up Oddity. But for the vast majority of viewers, this thing just blindsided them out of left field. McCarthy's sophomore effort premiered at 2024's South by Southwest, where it won the Audience Award in the festival's Midnighter section, though it was almost another 5 months before it began a limited theatrical engagement for a few weeks, and then was surreptitiously sent to streaming. And it's on streaming where Oddity became something of a viral hit, as horror fans took to social media to praise the film's atmosphere and performances, and question why such a terrific horror flick wasn't given more of a chance to flourish on the big screen. Given that Oddity ultimately landed rave reviews from most critics, and scored well with both casual horror fans and diehards alike, a ton of money was left on the table by not giving this a more substantial theatrical blowout. Instead, horror fans were left to discover it for themselves when it suddenly materialised on streaming to little initial fanfare, as if manifesting out of nothing. Number 3. The Last Showgirl. Gia Coppola's new drama, The Last Showgirl, premiered at last year's Toronto International Film Festival to positive notices, though it was relatively low on the buzzer meter compared to other award hopefuls which also debuted at the fest. This was the film's only major North American award stop before it was released in a single cinema in Los Angeles in December, a perfunctory requirement to make it eligible for Oscar consideration. Expectations weren't high for its awards prospects, given distributor Roadside Attractions' limited resources. So it was a genuine surprise to see The Last Showgirl's profile skyrocket basically out of nowhere after star Pamela Anderson received a surprise Best Actress nomination at the Golden Globes. This momentum continued into 2025, where Anderson and co-star Jamie Lee Curtis both received Screen Actors Guild nominations, and Curtis also landed a BAFTA nod shortly thereafter. This dovetailed quite perfectly into the film's early January theatrical expansion. And while the film ultimately failed to secure any Oscar nominations, it still ended up delivering a genuine comeback moment for Anderson, something which seemed like a faint pipe dream following its Toronto International Film Festival premiere. And given the gritty authenticity of Anderson's performance and Coppola's deft, sensitive filmmaking, it was most certainly well earned, albeit wholly unexpected. Number 2, Black Bag. It sounds ridiculous to say that a Steven Soderbergh-directed crime thriller starring the likes of Cate Blanchett, Michael Fassbender, Naomi Harris, Regé-Jean Page, and Pierce Brosnan could possibly come out of nowhere. But that's precisely what happened. Black Bag's marketing presence was nearly non-existent until about 2 weeks before it hit cinemas, with Focus Features oddly deciding to forego a festival run for the film, while only allowing reviews to drop a few days before release. And so many heads were turned when Black Bag opened to rave reviews from critics, landing a storming 97% on the tomato meter, making it the best reviewed major release of 2025 so far. Yet Soderbergh's film was dumped with all the disinterest that suggested it was something of an embarrassment for Focus, far from the witty, brilliantly paced and superbly acted genre romp that it actually is. As a result, Black Bag underperformed at the box office, admittedly against a rather hefty $50 million budget, though this absolutely feels like the sort of tight genre effort that'll find itself quite the audience when it does hit streaming. Number 1, Mads. It's extremely common for buzzy horror movies to build a head of steam on the genre festival circuit before releasing in cinemas or on streaming. But David Moreau's Mads opted to speedrun its way to fans instead. This French single-take horror chronicling the onset of a zombie apocalypse premiered at last year's Fantastic Fest. Though rather than tour all the expected horror festivals before releasing to the wider world, it ended up landing on streaming service Shudder less than a month after its world premiere. And so for many Shudder subscribers, they were left wondering precisely where the hell this gloriously chaotic, brilliantly acted one-take banger came from. Hell, even almost 6 months after release, it still doesn't have its own Wikipedia page. The filmmakers could have absolutely played the long game with this one and might have arguably been all the better for it. But on the flip side, it was neat for horror fans to discover a film without having their expectations overinflated by months and months of foaming festival hype.